All right, let's go to Esther 4. There's a lot of reading the Lord gave me, but I believe the Lord gave me this, and the Lord's moving, so I'm just going to follow what the Lord gave me, and maybe I can stay on track and not get off track like I like to do. And that's Esther chapter 4, verse number 1. And some of these words I might not be able to say, but I'll just skip over them. When Mordecai perceived, well, let's do a little backstory here. And I forgot the name because I'm terrible with names. Let me see. It was Mordecai and Haman. All right. So Mordecai was a Jew, devout Jew, and he didn't believe giving any man the glory that was deserved to God. Haman had just received the king's ring because he found favor in the king's sight. And Haman was high and mighty and didn't like when Mordecai didn't bow and move out the way. And that is where we're starting here in Esther 4. When Mordecai perceived all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth with ashes and went out into the midst of the city and cried a loud and bitter cry. And it came even before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. And in every province, wheresoever the king commanded his decree came, there was good mourning, there was great mourning among the Jews, and fasting, and weeping, and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. So Esther's maids and her chambermaids came and told it her. Then was the queen exceedingly grieved, and she sent raiment to clothe Mordecai, and to take away his sackcloth from him, but he received it not. Then called Esther for Hatach, one of the king's chamberlains, whom he had appointed to attend upon her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai to know what it was and why it was. All right, so far, I'm just going to narrate it in everybody's English, and maybe I might not get it all right, but I'm just going to do what I believe is going on here, and I know the story, and I know most of y'all know the story. Haman had tricked the king into making a decree to get rid of all the Jews in the land because the Jews were odd, because the Jews didn't go with everything. And you know, it sounds a lot like, and I know I bring this out a lot, but it sounds a lot like communism. When you don't agree and you don't bow to the will of the Communist Party, they'll get rid of you. And it was the same way back then. They may not have had, the manifestos and everything else of communism, but they were the same way. If you would not bow your head to their party, you'd be cut off from society. You'd be killed, all kind of evil, ways they could kill you, anything they could think of to make an example of you that no one else would do it. So, okay, let's go to, we're chapter 4, verse 6. And if I do that, this is going to be a long message. So let's keep on going. So Hatach went forth to Mordecai unto the street of the city, which was brought before the king's gate. And Mordecai told him of all that had happened unto him, and of the sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries for the Jews to destroy them. Not only did Haman work behind the scenes to get the Jews killed, he offered 10,000, I don't know exactly, pieces of gold, I believe is what it was described as, 10,000 pieces of gold to the king's treasury if the king done it. Now, I don't know how much 10,000, pieces of gold translates now, but I'm sure it was a hefty sum of money to eradicate the Jews from the land. And Mordecai told him, okay, let's go to verse 8. Also, he gave him a copy of the writing of the decree that was given at Shushan to destroy them, to show it unto Esther, and to declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should go in unto the king and make supplication unto him, and make request before him for her people. Think about it like this. Lord, this is going to be a long message, but let's keep on what God's given me. Think about it like this. Us as Americans today, the devil has decreed against us, and we need to make supplication for our country. We need to go unto the king, not the king naturally, but the king spiritually, God, and ask for his forgiveness for this land, for the things that we've done. I heard today that 1/3 of all babies won't make it term. They will eradicate that baby in the woman in the mother's womb. 1/3, 33.33% of children have been killed in this country because the church has stood still and stood quiet and did not go after and preach the gospel to those people. I'm not trying to pin any ribbons on me, but there's a and the reason I'm saying this because it's a good cause. I believe people need to support. There's a mission. It's called Preborn, and what they do is supply mothers that are thinking about giving abortions or getting abortions in ultrasound. And usually they say that 80% of people that get an ultrasound will not abort their babies. Us as Christians, we have a duty to the people that don't have a voice to, give to. We might not be standing on the sidewalk of those abortion clinics and getting in people's face. And for me, honestly, I don't think that's the right way to do it. For me, the right thing to do is like Preborn. You give them money, $28. I know I sound like I'm a info commercial for them, but $28 will give a pregnant woman an ultrasound. And if you save 80% of 33%, I'm pretty good at math, but let's just say that's about 10%. 20% of children that would have died would not die. All right, let's keep on. Esther 4:9. And Hatach, I guess I said it wrong. I said it different every other time, but y'all know what I'm trying to say. Came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. And Esther spake unto him, and gave him command unto Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces to know that whatsoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into the inner court, who is not called, there is one law of his to put him to death, except such to whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter, that he may live. But I have not been called to come unto the king these 30 days. And they told to Mordecai Esther's words. Then Esther commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. Now, what's he saying? He's saying, just because you're in the king's house don't mean you will be spared. Now, think about America today. Just because you're a Christian and just because you're doing the right thing don't mean when this world order or when they try to make this country a communist country that they're not coming for you. And if you stood and done nothing and sat on your hands and were scared to say anything because something might, the mob might say something bad about you, then you're just as wrong as the mob. I'm preaching to myself too. Because a lot of times I don't say stuff that I should say because I know that it's going to stir the pot. And there's a time to stir the pot. And there's a time to sit back and let God move. And I think it's come to the point in America that we need to stand. We need to quit cowering back and letting the LGBTQ plus crowd take over America and tell our children how, sexual immorality and everything else is okay, that it's just an alternate lifestyle, when it's not. It is a sin. All right, let's keep on going. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, think about that. It's just like what I just said. If you hold your peace at this time, all right, 14, then shall there enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? A lot of Pentecostals, they have a Pentecostal revival series because of the times. And I agree with the sentiment. But my problem is they say because of the times, but they keep it to themselves. They say because of the times, but they don't care about your children and your family and your people that's out in sin and don't know what they're doing. And that's not to say that I've always done what I should in the public square. But because of the times, we've got to stand and quit letting anything and everything mow us over. Then Esther, that's chapter 4, verse 15. Then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer. Go, gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye from me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I will also, and my handmaidens will fast likewise. And so will I go unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. A lot of times today, fasting has went by the wayside. And I don't do it near enough. I'm not here to say I fast every week, or anything like that. But fasting has went by the wayside. The church used to fast for certain situations. They used to fast for the country. They used to fast for if they had some kind of sin in their life and they couldn't get rid of it, they'd fast and God would move in that situation. But we've gotten to the point that we eat fine. And you can look at me and tell I eat fine, but we eat fine, but our spiritual man is dead. Our spiritual man is sitting there withering up because we don't have we don't have the gumption to get something from God like our forefathers. Lord. It's not easy to fast. It's not easy to do without, I'm diabetic. And I use that as an excuse sometimes. I'm diabetic, so I can't fast. That's not true. You might have to carry you some candy around or do something like that, but if you fast for the right reasons, God will move in it. We need to fast for our country. Now, I'm not just saying this because the political party that I don't agree with got the White House and they got the House and they got the Senate. It's nothing like that. I mean, I know y'all have heard me speak about politics quite a bit, and you can tell that I'm independent, leaning Republican very hard. But whether Donald Trump is in the White House, whether Joe Biden's in the White House, whether Kamala Harris is in the White House, it don't matter who's in the White House. If we don't give ourselves to God and serve Him through, thick and thin, no matter what may come our way, we won't stand in the time to come. The Bible says if you can't run with the footman, how can you stand against the horseman? We're with the footman right now, and we can't even keep up spiritually. We can't even keep up spiritually with the footman. What are we going to do? I know this is unpopular belief, but there will be a mark of the beast. There will be the end time. What are we going to do when the end time comes? Are we going to stand? Or are we going to just cower down and, take whatever they give us? Take that mark and be damned for eternity? Or are we going to stand for God and live in eternity with Him? If we can't do it now when there's a little persecution about the way we believe things, how are we going to stand when they say either you agree with this or I'm going to put a bullet in your head? Oh, Jesus. How are we going to stand? Amen. He's crying, so he's doing good. We had a baby fall. So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. All right, let's go to chapter 5. And I probably won't make it through all this. Now it came to pass on the 3rd day that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's house, over against the king's house. And the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house, over against the gate of the house. And it was so, when the king saw Esther, the queen, standing in his court, that she obtained favor in his sight. And the king held out to Esther the golden sepulchre that was in his hand. So Esther drew near and touched the top of the sepulchre. Then said the king unto her, What wilt thou, Queen Esther? And what is thy request? It shall be even given thee to the half of the kingdom. And Esther answered, If it seem good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day unto the banquet that I have prepared for him. Then the king said, Cause Haman to make haste, that he may do as Esther has said. So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. And the king said unto Esther at the banquet of wine, What is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? Even to the half of the kingdom it shall be performed. Then answered Esther and said, My petition and my request is, if I have found favor in thy sight, king, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if I had pleased the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, Let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow as the king has said. Then went Haman forth that day joyful and with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he stood up not, nor moved for him, he was full of indignation against Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself, and when he came home, he sent and called for his friends and his wife. And Haman told them of the glory of his riches and the multitude of his children, and all the things wherein the king had promoted him, and how he had advanced him above the princes and servants of the king. Haman said moreover, yea, Esther the queen did let no man come in with the king unto the banquet that she had prepared but myself. And tomorrow I am invited unto her also with the king. Yet all this availeth me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. So he wasn't happy with all the things that he got from the king because of the hate for Mordecai. You know, this is, and I did not mean for this message to go this way. It is translating very well to what's happening today. You know, many in the community now, they don't know why, but they just hate us Christians. We really ain't done nothing to them, but they just hate. And that hate is because of the person that has sent them, their father, the devil. All right, let's keep on just a little bit. Esther 5:14. And then said his wife and all his friends unto him, let a gallows be made of 50 cubits high, and tomorrow speak thou unto the king, that Mordecai may be hanged thereon. Then go thou and merrily with the king unto the banquet. And the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made. On that night, could not the king sleep? You know, think about that. The king probably had the finest bed, probably had people fanning him where he wasn't too hot. You know, he had all these things, and he still couldn't sleep. It wasn't something in the natural, it was God, because God can move. All right, on that night, could not the king sleep? And he commanded to bring the book of records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Tresh, two of the king's chamberlains, and the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hand on the king. And the king said, what honor and dignity hath been done to Mordecai for this? Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, there is nothing done for him. And the king said, who is in the court? This is really how God moves. And the king said, who is in the court? Now Haman was come into the outward court of the king's house to speak unto the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he prepared for him. And the king's servant said unto him, behold, Haman standeth in the court. And the king said, let him come in. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor? Now Haman thought in his heart, to whom would the king delight to do honor more than himself. And Haman answered the king, for the man whom the king delighteth to honor, let the royal apparel be brought, which the king useth to wear, and the horse that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head, and let his apparel and horse be delivered into the hand of the one the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man withal whom the king delighteth to honor, and bring him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighteth to honor. You know, that's pretty telling. That's how the world is today. If they think it's them, they'll lavish themselves with something. You know, I could use this and we could do that and we could do all this for this person that you want to honor if it's me. Then the king said to Haman, make haste and take the apparel and the horse, as thou hadst said, and do even so to Mordecai, the Jew, that sitteth on the king's gate. Let nothing fall of all that thou hast spoken. Then took Haman the apparel and the horse, arrayed Mordecai, and brought him on horseback through the streets of the city, and proclaimed before him. Now, look at that. The guy that had, plotted against Mordecai, intent on hanging him and everyone that shared the same blood, was having to go through the streets and proclaim how great Mordecai was. Thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor. And Mordecai came again to the king's gate, but Haman hasted to his house mourning, and having his head covered. And Haman told his wife and all his friends everything that had befallen him. Then said his wise men and his wife unto him, if Mordecai be of the seed of the Jews before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him. And while they were yet talking with him, came the king's chamberlains, and hasted to bring Haman unto the banquet that Esther had prepared. All right, let's go to chapter 7. I'm trying to hurry, because I know I'm probably running long. So, chapter 7, verse 1. And Haman came to the banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said again unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, what is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed, even to the half of the kingdom. Then Esther the queen answered and said, if I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. Then the king answered and said unto Esther the queen, who is he, and where is he, that durst presume in his heart to do so? And Esther said, the adversary and enemy is the wicked Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and queen. And the king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, went into the palace garden. And Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther the queen. For he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king. Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. Then said the king, will he force the queen also before me in the house? As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. And Harbona, one of the chamberlains, said to the king, behold also the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman hath made for Mordecai, who has spoken good for the king, standeth in the house of Haman. Then the king said, hang him thereon. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that had been prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified. And that's a long way to go to the title of the message. And I'm not starting, so don't get scared. It's hang your enemies from his gallows. You know, Haman had went behind Mordecai's back, and he had devised a plan to get rid of Mordecai. And he thought everything was going smooth. He done built a gallows that he could hang Mordecai on, and everything seemed to be going his way. But that's the same way in the spirit. Sometimes people work against us. Sometimes people, and let's go a step further, because I don't want to say this the wrong way. Let's move this to the devil. The devil has, went behind our backs and worked against us and done this or that, made people think things about us that ain't true. And he's the father of deception. And he's gone behind backs and made everybody think that you're something that you're not when you're trying to live for God. But as the story goes, the trap that the devil has for you, he'll fall into. The devil has no outlet. All he has to do, all he's waiting for, he knows, all he's waiting for is to be cast into the lake of fire. And he's trying to take you with him because he knows that that's his fate. And he wants as many people as he can to go down and have that fate with him. But God has made a way that no matter what, the devil has, and whatever he's thrown at you, he'll be cast into that fire. And that's the same way with Haman. He thought he had it won. The devil thought he had it won on Calvary when they thought they killed Jesus. But on that third day, that when Jesus rose, the devil knew that he'd been whooped and that he didn't have any way to get away from his fate, which is the lake of fire. A lot of times, we think the devil's won in our lives. A lot of times we think, you know what? I don't think it's worth it anymore. I don't think I'm going to make it out of this. I don't think, I feel that there's some people with a suicidal spirit that they think that it ain't worth it. They think that they're not going to make it anyway. What's the choice? What's the reason why they're going to keep on prolonging the pain? But if you just hold on to God, God will take care of that devil. God will take care of that hopelessness that comes when you're fighting by yourself at night and you're all alone and it feels like God's nowhere to be found. Just keep holding on. It's like the saying says, when you're at the end of your rope, tie a knot and hold on for dear life. That's how it is. Sometimes you just got to hold on for dear life. Sometimes it feels like nothing's going to get better. Sometimes it feels like the end's coming and there's nothing you can do to make it better. But God will make a way if you continue to hold on and trust Him. No matter what the situation may be, no matter what you have done in your past, God is still able to move no matter what is going on in your life. Don't succumb to the devil's tricks. Because in the end, God has the last laugh. There's a saying that when God laughs, it's not funny. And that devil, he thinks he's got you. You think he's got you. But just hold on. Because, as I said, hang your enemies from his gallows. The gallows that he meant for you is the gallows that he'll hang from. Just keep holding on to God's unchanging hand. As the old song, hold to God's unchanging hand. He don't change. One day he's not mad. I know we all know that one person that's moody. That when you go in to work or you go here or there, you walk in and you're like, what mood is this guy in today? Is he going to be happy? Is he going to be sad? Is he going to be throwing stuff? What's he going to do? God's not like that. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. What's that tell you? Did God die for you in the past? He'd do it again today. Did God heal you in the past? He'd heal you today. Did God make a way when there was no way? He'll do it today. God don't change. He still loves you no matter what you've done. No matter what the devil has said that you went too far and you will not bring him back, you will not make it back to God. If you have godly sorrow and you ask for forgiveness and you turn from your evil ways, God will meet you halfway. God will meet you 3/4 of the way if you'll just repent and give your life to him. Now, I know I've been a little hard lately. And I try not to be. In fact, this message, I thought it was going to be uplifting. I think all these messages, I think it's going to be uplifting are the hardest. But sometimes we just got to do, as I say, we just got to do what God tells us to do. And like I've said at the end of a few of these messages, I don't do it just to be hard. I don't do it just to be mean. And I don't do it just to be seen. I do it because God put it in my heart to say. And if he's put it in my heart to say, then there's somebody that needs it. There's somebody that needs it. But this church, not just this church, but the church world in America today cannot continue to allow Satan to run this country. The church today cannot sit back and allow the devil to do whatever he sees fit. And just sit back cowardly, scared that they may come after you next. As the scripture said about Esther. And we got to be the same way sometimes. Sometimes spiritually, sometimes even physically. If I perish, I perish. But as Paul said, to die is to gain. If something happens to you because of your stand for God, that's the best way to go. That's the best way to go. It's better to die for the sake of God than to live cowardly and not do what God has told us to do. Now, we love you. I know it sounds like I sometimes blow, as they say, shoot with both barrels. But we do love you. And the reason we preach like we do is because we want y'all to make it. We want y'all, we want the church to wake up. We want the church to wake up and stand and pray. And we need to fast and pray for our country. We need to fast and pray for, now, this may be controversial, but we need to fast and we need to pray for Joe Biden. We need to fast and we need to pray for Kamala Harris. We need to fast and we need to pray for Nancy Pelosi. Now, understand, those are not my favorite people. Those are not my favorite people, and I don't agree with their policies. But it's our obligation as a Christian to pray for our leaders, whether you like them or whether you don't. You know, there was many kings. I'm trying to end and it keeps on coming to me. So there was many kings of Israel that were evil. And the people of God continue to pray no matter what. And in the good times and in the bad times, we need to pray for our leaders. We need to pray for our local government. We need to pray for our states and our nation and whatever country you may be from. And, you know, humbly pray before God for our leadership. But anyway, God bless y'all. And if y'all need us, you know how to get a hold of us, and we'll see y'all later.